What do I have the power to change or not? How am I conducting myself? How does that conduct impact the environment I create, the relationships I create? So really the shift into, because I think mindfulness and yoga are, they're forever sisters, right? So they go together. And I think as I really honed in on my spiritual practices, my spiritual well-being, it just naturally led me to be more comfortable in the mindfulness and the yogic space.
Welcome to the Do You Feel Heard podcast, a production of Helping the Herd. Helping the Herd is committed to empowering individuals to liberate themselves from the patterns that keep them from creating their ideal life. If you like this podcast, visit helpingtheherd.com to find resources and personalized coaching to empower you to be your best self.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Do You Feel Heard podcast. And Ian and I are here today and very happy to be hosting Angelica. Angelica, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. How's it going, everybody?
Doing good.
Yep, doing great over here. Happy to have you here, Angelica.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about this podcast is getting to, have some time with people in my life who I'm inspired by, who I've had connections with, and then to be able to merge different parts of my life and have Ian and get to meet some of my favorite people. It's a real joy. And so, Angelica, I'm really glad you're here. I hesitate to introduce people because, I never know what people want to highlight, but I'll share just a little bit of how I know you. You've been one of my favorite yoga teachers and one of my most impactful yoga teachers here in Pittsburgh since I moved here. And I've been really, really thankful to be part of the different yoga communities that you foster. So that's all I'll say, and then I'll let you introduce yourself to our guests and to Ian.
There's many things that I could say. Hi everyone, I'm Angelica. I'm a yoga teacher, but really much more than that. I am director of Yoga Recovery Pittsburgh. That is kind of the main point of contact that Derek drew me in from, so thank you for that. Also co-owner of both Yoga Factory Schools and Yoga Hive with my amazing partner Zeb Homison. So grateful to have those communities. I also own a clothing line, just a side gig, Radiant Activewear. So that all being said, serial entrepreneur, fierce yogini, spiritual enthusiast, mental health advocate, lifelong learner. I'll leave it at that.
Wonderful. Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. You encapsulated a lot in a way that was digestible too. Part of the clarity that comes with some of the yoga practices. But wow, what a list. Ian, I'm curious if any of those caught you that you wanted to expand on.
Yeah, definitely. So my first question, and this is one of my favorite questions for fellow yoga teachers, is why become a yoga teacher? I know so many people who are passionate about yoga that go to yoga classes all of the time, but there's typically something that sparks or initiates that wanting to go beyond the student and go into the deeper learning of what yoga is beyond just the poses that you're going to be guided through in a class. And I'm just curious, what was your motivation for that? What led you to decide I want to go deeper into this than just being in a class?
Yeah, great question. And I will certainly expand my journey, but I will say I think I've watched the industry. I've been in this industry 18 years at this point, so I've kind of watched the industry start to make teacher trainings very trendy. And they are, there are so many trainings out there now, and online, and weekends, and da-da-da. And those are all good, and I think we're also seeing a trend towards fewer people that actually want to teach and more people that actually want to dive deep into themselves, which is what a training lends itself to. Personally, I had been practicing 8 years, and for within my first year of practice, I knew I was going to teach at some point. I knew that deep down, but I also very much felt this is my practice. I don't want to give up my practice. Like this, my time on mat is mine. It's all mine. This is my only time for myself. And I knew that wasn't the headspace to be in when you became a teacher. And so I waited until I realized that it didn't mean giving up my practice to step into an additional role, that I could still always be a student. And like that for me, and continues to be like my number one, like I will be learning forever. I continue to spend every last discretionary dime on education, you know, and I will always do that. So for me, the choice to be a teacher was finally stepping out of my bubble and realizing I wanted other people to experience what I had. So, but that was a developed mindset over time, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I also resonate with that, wanting to deepen the practice, wanting to go, beyond. I feel like most yoga classes that I've attended anyway are somewhat like surface level. You're going to be led through this thing and you're going to have your experience on your mat, but you may not know the why. You may not know, okay, I should be tensing, not tensing, but activating this muscle group, and my foot should be doing this, so that way I get this out of this pose. Like in an hour-long class, it's very seldom that you're going to get all of that information.
True.
In that small piece. So that was one of my motivations as well. But I loved what you were saying about continuing to learn, and it's not about the less possessive and more I want to share this. I want to help others find what I have found. And so I resonate with that quite a bit.
Yeah,
Step
and
out of the bubble.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go. No, I was just saying, stepping out of the bubble. How beautiful.
I think too, and it's something that I actually was in discussion with recently with some peers of mine. If you're teaching well, your students will surpass you. And I think it takes a special person to be that humble, that they realize that, and realize that if you are going to be a teacher, like people are going to follow you to a point, and then they got to fly out of the nest. They got to develop. They got to evolve. We got to take this further. Otherwise, what are we doing?
Right.
So, and I think it takes a special level of humility to be willing to do that.
Yeah, I had a follow-up question before. I'm sure Derek's got a whole list of things to ask about, but I wanted to touch on the trendy yoga teacher training topic because I also see this. It seems as though if there's a yoga studio, they're offering yoga teacher trainings, and that may or may not be, I don't know, let's not judge it as good or bad, but how would you recommend or suggest someone who is curious to go deeper? What guidance would you have for them in finding the yoga teacher training that maybe is best for them? Or like how do you discern which yoga teacher training to take when there are so many, and if every yoga studio is offering one, how do you know which one is going to bear the fruit that you're looking for?
Right. Yeah. And I've had this conversation with several prospective trainees because they see the teacher as, it's a glorious state. They get to stand up there and do yoga all day. And it's like, we do, but it's taken years of blood, sweat, and tears and perseverance to get to that point. So the first thing I always say is, like, how much do you want this to be a part of your life? Number one, because you could easily find an online training program or a couple weekends somewhere and learn some stuff and meet some great people, and awesome, maybe that's enough for you, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to really make a life teaching, then you need to go and study with people you trust You need to be reading, you need to be taking classes as much as you can, you need to be diving into the philosophy that underlies what this whole practice is. You need to truly love and resonate with the style that you're trying to certify in. And my personal recommendation, and we conduct all of our trainings this way, go and have an immersive experience. Go to somewhere where you're going to step out of your life, out of your reality, out of your day-to-day, and sit with it. Because it's in those, anywhere from 10 to 30 days, usually, when you're completely removed from any distraction, that's where the transformation happens, when you're sitting with it, when you're really in the training bubble. Like nothing else is getting inside of that. And that's a different level of teacher. And again, no level's wrong. If you just want to go and learn some stuff, that's fantastic. I mean, I applaud that for anybody. But if you really want to make a life teaching, you got to really, really invest on a very deep level.
Wonderful. A question answered, Ian?
Oh, absolutely, Derek. I was waiting for you to jump in.
I was waiting for anything there. I love it. You did, no. And you really do have me in deep. Yeah, as Ian knows me, I have lists of questions, thoughts, that pop up from the easy mind, sparking everywhere. Especially this diving deep versus teaching really spoke to me when it comes to taking teacher trainings with or without the intention of teaching it, and what that means. To really master something, they do often say you have to teach it. And I found that through tennis. I would teach and do like tennis clinics in the summer for youth and stuff. And then, it helps you with the fundamentals. Even if you're not really doing the thing, it does help you with mastery, deeper and deeper levels, let's say. I don't want to just say the fundamentals. So you can take that to school. I was tutoring people in school, in college, PA school. I was always tutoring, and that made sense to me as a way of, looking at what it means to learn. And then meditation was the big one for me. And this step for me, where I got certified in teaching meditation, was such a mind trip, such a trip when it comes to just what you're speaking to, Angelica, like being a lifelong learner, knowing that I will always be a student, that I'm not some guru on the mountaintop, and knowing there's something worthwhile enough here for me to share, that I took the time and effort to learn how to share it because I wanted to share it. And then I had to become a teacher, and then I had to take on all these ego trips around needing to know everything or needing to be enough for this thing. So all that to bring back to, could you tell us a little bit about more how you stepped out of that bubble and were able to take your practice into a more public sphere with or without losing your mind? Not sharing too much about myself here. It's a constant struggle, though. It really is.
I've been a perfectionist my whole life. Still working on it, But, the first thing that came to my mind as you were speaking, Derek, which, by the way, an aside, I definitely need to get you in here at some point, because I get so many people that ask me, how do I meditate? And it's like, everybody's different. I can't teach you one way. So I would hope that you have some good tips for a lot of people. But the first thing that I thought as you were speaking is that you have to accept that somebody's always going to be wiser than you. A guru, like the concept of a guru is so not how the Western understand it. Like if you really want a guru, then you go and you study with that person, and you are indebted to that person for years and years and years on end, and you vow to their teachings. I mean, and that's a massive life commitment. That's not what we are. That's not what we are. I'm here to share something that I love and that I believe in. I think part of my shift for me was also been a dancer my whole life. I found, I was actually forced into my first yoga class because we were assigned cross-training in college to supplement our dance training, and our professor set us up with classes at this Bikram yoga school in Baltimore. And so my first class was a bunch of junior and senior level competitive dancers. So that was my first experience. And coming out of college, where I was, 8, 10, 12 hours a day dancing and rehearsing, to out of college where I was still dancing. I was with the company for a while, but it was very part-time. I felt this physical gap I had to fill. And so I started filling it with more yoga. And as time went on, the yoga now supplements my dancing rather than vice versa. And so for a while though, like the transition for me was teaching not as a performance modality, because I've always been a performer. And when you're up on a podium or you're leading a class, there was this aspect of me that was resonating with that performer in me. And so as time has gone on, I'm realizing I'm not performing anything. I'm just extremely confident and resonant with what I teach and how I teach it, because I've gone through years and years and years of training and learning and discerning and just evaluating where I'm at as a person and in my practice. So it's definitely been a shift in like my life choices as much as it's been a shift in how I want to take care of my physical body long term. And I think that's how I've made the shift in my teaching mindset. I hope that answers your question. Went a little off tangent there. No, it really did. And performer versus teacher really resonated with me. And why do we get performance anxiety versus teaching anxiety? You don't hear as much about, even though there can be a performative part to teaching, maybe not. But how you said it really did resonate. But could you just expand a little on the last thing you said? You were talking about different lifestyle choices and like just mindsets have really been that shift. Could you expand on any of those and what you meant by that? Yeah. Also kind of in the transition from performer to teacher, a lot of that shift also came with my spiritual awakening, the depth of my mindfulness practices, which I have my Live Mindfully shirt on today.
I should have worn mine. I have the same one.
Choosing to see the world from a different lens, choosing to just look at the world from a yogic perspective, i.e. like what's right in front of me, what is the present moment, what do I have the power to change or not, how am I conducting myself, how does that conduct impact the environment I create, the relationships I create. So really the shift into, because I think mindfulness and yoga are, they're forever sisters, right? So they go together, and I think as I really honed in on my spiritual practices, my spiritual well-being, it just naturally led me to be more comfortable in the mindfulness in the yogic space.
That's wonderful. Thank you. No, that really answers, and I see almost in it's like an unfolding. There's kind of like a blooming that I feel like you're speaking to, a spiritual bloom, if you will, that happens with this process of letting go of all these things that we've added on top of experience for so many years. Earlier, while I was meditating, I was out on the porch and I just had this feeling of home being wherever I actually allow it to be, wherever I let myself drop whatever the separation, the false horizon. I was reading a poem by David White about horizons. It was really resonating with me in speaking. And seeing these false horizons, these false separations and distinctions between here and there arising in front of me, and realizing I could drop those. potentially, if I'm blessed, if I find the right, balance of effort and non-effort, then I can drop those, and home can be right here. And it was wonderful. And so I really am resonating with what you're saying about this lens of looking at your conduct, looking at your mind states, looking at your way of being, and noticing what's comfortable, what's not, almost a hot, cold, and until you find, some would call it maybe their path, their way, or home. We're all just walking each other home.
Yeah, and I think now, I mean, to just kind of like seal that point in, like, I feel so comfortable teaching, like it just feels natural to me, and that's, I've learned that over time, like that's where my happy space is, so.
Yeah. And
that's how you know you're doing, that's how you know, to your question, Ian, if you did the right training, like, did it feel like home to you? Did it feel like, that's where you were supposed to be? Did you walk away feeling like, yeah, that's what I needed,
Yeah, I have a follow-up question on your yogic perspective. What I heard you saying was that there came a point where you kind of shifted the lens which you were seeing your reality through, and really focusing on your choices and how your actions ultimately create your experience, or at least impact your experience. And the words that came to me was radical responsibility. Can you share a little bit about your method of radical responsibility? How do you go? Because there are so many people, and I mean, I don't know how much Derek has shared with you about what we do, but in the work that we do with others, in coaching their communication, how they communicate with themselves as well as how they communicate with others, there is often in the beginning of the work a big disconnect between what's happening to me, or to them rather, and what they're doing to contribute to what's happening to them. There's a disconnect in that radical responsibility. So I'm curious if you could describe your method for maybe those who don't have that experience, who aren't moving through the world recognizing, oh, look at me making this decision that led to this, and I don't want that to happen again, or I want a different outcome, so I'm going to alter the way that I'm moving through the world. What's your method in finding that radical responsibility, modifying your lens?
Yeah, for sure. And as a therapist as well, I very much take a person-centered approach. Like, I will guide you. I am here as a sounding board. I will offer advice if you ask for it. I will give you homework. I will hold you accountable for it, but I am not responsible for your healing, period. You're entirely responsible for the reality you create. And until you accept that, things will not change. Therapy doesn't feel good. If you are with a therapist for years on end and you are still having the same depression, anxiety symptoms, you're not actually doing therapy. You're with somebody that's helping you feel good in the moment and agrees with you. Taking radical responsibility means facing your demons. It means not avoiding the stuff that doesn't feel comfortable. It means looking at every single action you take, seeing the results of it, and being like, okay, did I like that or not? And if I didn't, what do I have to do differently to elicit a different response? If I notice reactionary responses, with myself or others, I sit with it and say, okay, I'm not going to blame the person that elicited that reaction. I'm going to say, okay, why am I reacting that way? What is that saying about me? Right? So, and we're human, we're naturally emotional beings. The gift of being human means we get all the emotions on the spectrum. We get rage, and we get exuberant joy, and we get everything in between. But I'm a big fan of the Neville Goddard concept, which I know Derek's familiar with, but like, you know, everything is you pushed out, right? So if there's something you're seeing in your reality that doesn't resonate with you, you gotta go back in. And every single interaction that I have now, whether I like it or not, I am constantly going back to, okay, what can I do differently? And it's humbling. It's very humbling, you know, because sometimes you think, well, I'm fine, I'm healed, I'm great the way I am, blah, 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 blah. And I think there's a lot of talk out there in the world of this, like, you're perfect the way you are. Yes, you are. But if you still don't like something that you're experiencing, then there's something in there that you could shift. And that's a choice. That's our free will choice. But then if it keeps happening again and again and again, and you still don't like it, well, nobody else outside of you is going to change that. So I think the lens is a non-avoidant lens. It's a raw lens. It's a brutally honest lens. And again, it doesn't always feel good. And you got to be okay with that. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, we definitely align with the non-avoidance lens. That's something that we overlap in our methods here. Avoiding anything is not going to ultimately get you anything besides delayed suffering.
Right.
And I also resonated strongly with the idea that whatever is going on that we may not be enjoying, I think the phrase you put was, it's us being pushed outward. Another way that I like to phrase it is, we're all mirrors for each other. And so if somebody is eliciting some sort of a reaction or a trigger or a response or something along those lines, they're simply showing you the thing within you that you're needing to, or not needing to, but that you're the opportunity within you to grow or heal or shift what you're doing, bringing awareness to something that there is, you know, healing needing to be done there.
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, like you see something in your life that's like taking a long time to resolve, and maybe you're just sitting and being like, oh, man, like why, like what is the block here? Like what am I missing here? And like also being okay with, even if you are doing that reflection, realizing that it's divine timing, it's not up to you. You know, like sometimes you gotta sit and, dare I say, wait for it, which nobody likes to do anymore.
Sure.
Including me. You know, to be dead honest. But and there's that layer of it too. It's like, oh, okay, well I see the mirror and then I'm gonna reflect back and then like, okay, I'll fix it and then it's done. It's like, it may not be. You know, you might have to do several layers of that. So it's also realizing that just having that lens is one thing. Having an unbelievable amount of patience and respect for yourself and respect for the things you can't control is another layer on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. As we're kind of, it seems like we're shifting our conversation from yoga to mental health or mindfulness. I'm curious, as we're transitioning, where do you see the overlap or the crossover from yoga to the mental health space, to the self-improvement or yogic perspective of really looking inward at how we're creating our experience? How does yoga support that or help people with that path?
So the yogic path is absolutely a solo journey, 1000%. If you look at some of the oldest yogic texts, like the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, you know, it's the hero's journey, right? It's the quintessential hero's journey. We've seen this in how many movie plots over decades now, right? But it's this idea that you start to look at, how am I interacting with the world? How am I conducting myself? How am I connecting to my body? How am I connecting to my breath? How am I connecting to my focus? Those are all branches of yoga. So this is the concept of mindfulness, which my definition for mindfulness is acute awareness of self in the present moment. The only thing that we can know is the present moment. And so for me, the yogic path is very much a present moment awareness path. How am I right now? And being, to use your term, radically accepting and responsible for that state in any moment. So I truly see the yogic path as mindfulness. Just the ancient Indians from hundreds and hundreds of years ago had it nailed well before our modern culture caught on to that, and they had it all laid out. We just, didn't see it that way necessarily. But I think they're completely tied together, 1,000%.
I hear you. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I love that. Obviously, mindfulness. I've never heard it put just that way. Mindfulness has been this focus of mine for over a decade now, but I've never heard someone put that, I think, let's say radically, to keep up with that word, of yoga is mindfulness. But if you really do just unfold, like I said, lay it out, like the 8 limbs, if you just took something, you splayed it out in like at least 8 or millions of limbs, and, dissected each part, of course the body will be part of the mind. Of course the mind will be part of the body. Of course your conduct and actions will all play into the simple act of coming to the present moment, that only thing that is ever there.
Right.
Beautifully said. And I keep seeing parallels in Angelica and Ian's approaches to life, and I want to just point out one connection between you two. The 4 Agreements is out in one of the Yoga Factory students, big poster with them actually out there. So after you get out of that, I kind of figured it's such a good one. And after you get out of your yoga class, right before you have something to, really digest. I love where it's focused, and that's the focus of one of the focuses of the curriculum that developed with Helping the Herd for the communication and intimacy coaching. So the place to start, that bedrock of the 4 Agreements that really starts opening up. So I've just loved seeing you guys connect and seeing some of those through lines of looking inward, taking responsibility for your awareness of the world, seeing others as mirrors, and noticing when there's the smoky and foggy mirrors. And it's just good to see you guys here as well. But I did want to expand on one of these things. It's still, like you're saying, there's no real actual horizon or blurry point between these different practices and like labels we're putting on the experience of life. But one thing I think about in yogic terms all the time, but I think applies to all of them. How do you approach the balance between effort and ease and non-effort? Finding your appropriate edge is one of the ways that's really resonated with me in terms of my yoga, my asana practice. Again, to try to expand a little bit here, yoga is so many things, but in terms of my physical yoga asana practice, finding your appropriate edge seems to be the crux of it to me. You go too far and you injure yourself, you burn out, you're too effortful, you're not able to allow things to happen in their own timing, in the timing that's needed. But if you don't put in effort, you don't press yourself, you also never make progress. How do you find that appropriate edge?
I think it's a couple of things. I think, first of all, a little bit, like I know ultimately we all want to operate on the frequency of love, right? And there's only 2. There's love or there's fear. However, as a human being, I do believe, because we're human, right? A little shred of fear keeps you really sharp. Right? If you never do anything that scares you, you're never going to push that edge. Right? And so I think it's a matter of finding that spot where you're like, oh, I'm a little uncomfortable right now, and you're able to sit with it. Because if you're able to sit with it, then you know you have found the edge that is appropriate for you. But if you are doing something, you're like, oh, it's a little uncomfortable, oh, I'm just going to push a little bit harder, oh, I'm just going to go, and then you're in pain. And that's not what we want. That's taking it too far. So I think it's the ability to get to the point where you're doing something that little bit scares you, makes you just a little bit afraid, that puts you in a place of discomfort, but not of pain. And that doesn't have to be physical pain. I mean, obviously, you know, I've seen yogis that push to get a certain posture or whatever, and they push too hard and they do hurt themselves because that's ego. That was their ego saying, no, you have to fix it now. You have to get it now. There's no timeline for these things, you know, but if you're working that point where you're like, okay, it's uncomfortable, but I can still breathe here. I can still sit with this. That's when you know. Is your breath still intact? And that can be metaphorically, physically, either way. But is your breath still intact?
Yeah, great time. Wow. I love that. When I give questions that kind of, you know, difficult and expansive and, you know, can apply to anything, I don't expect to get an answer back. That's a pretty darn good, you know, actual precise answer.
Nice.
And it mirrored. Thank you. It really mirrored, all these mirrors and connections. One of the guided meditations I was doing this morning, I was kind of trying out different teachers this morning and trying some different styles. And one of them said almost the same thing and really tried to explain it to, you know, help that rational mind during this extended 30-minute meditation. I think it's actually helpful in some meditations to let the rational mind interact a little bit and help it settle and get you to that. That's what he's saying. Breathe. Just focus back on the breath and in the sitting with it, and then embracing stillness. Noticing when you want to fidget and move, and embracing the stillness, and not letting each mental motion cause or lead to or interact with a physical motion. You can let something build, and you can build that discomfort in a way, and go back to the breath and sit with it. And that there's, just like you're saying, there's some kind of transformation. I go back to what you said earlier about training. Immersion leads to transformation, and like a training program. Same with our own breath. Can we immerse ourselves in our body and our breath for 10 minutes? Yeah. And can that transform?
And too many people can't do that, at least not yet.
What a great answer. And what you're saying is that you can then find your appropriate edge there and get on this path of growth, change your trajectory through that. By just sitting with what is, you don't have to solve it. It'll kind of start to come to you. You'll notice where the pain is, where it's not. And something In talks about a lot is kind of tuning into currents. And I really like the way In will refer to, you know, trying to find the current and you know, the flow of this thing that we're doing here. I'm hearing a lot of that here too.
Well, and I think we're in a very fix-it society, right? We're in a, what's my diagnosis? What's the pill I take? What's the workout I do? What's the supplement I buy? You know, and then my problems are going to go away. We're in a fix-it culture. You know, nobody wants to sit and wait until it's time. You know, and that's working that edge is how you solve things faster. It's not by pushing yourself all the way over, and it's not by staying comfortable, right? You got to work at that edge, and that's the only way. It's the only way. So.
Yeah, I think there's also a little bit of that fix-it mentality, as well as the instant gratification that we're all very much used to. Of, oh well, it may have taken me, you know, years to develop this specific lifestyle that has led to this undesirable outcome, but I want to fix it in a day or two. Or, you know, where's the 5-day class or workshop that I can take, and then boom, I've just reversed years of, you know, these patterns and these habits. And I think another big piece of yoga is the quiet, the calm, the just sitting in it, being present with it, and without judgment, right? And that's another thing that we often talk about with nonviolent communication, is observing without evaluation. Just simply observe, simply see it without giving it a name or a title. And this applies to the mindfulness piece as well. In meditation, you're not going to judge the sound of the bird. It's just a sound, and then you allow it. You acknowledge it and you allow it. And so I think that's also another common thing that people are struggling with, and running into this wall of like, well, what do you mean I can't just reverse years of, you know, bad habits and unhealthy patterns in a week in a, you know, yoga retreat or whatever it is that they're looking for a quick fix or a, you know.
That it could be something that simple that jump starts the healing process. And It could be, maybe it is one yoga retreat and all of a sudden you shift your mindset. It could be that. It could, you know, we never know that. But most often, I would say, it takes a lot more in-depth reflection, time, and effort. You know, the other thing too is like, I could go on yoga retreats every weekend for a year and still be an asshole. You know, like, unless I'm gonna take that, integrate it, alchemize it, reflect on those experiences, and take action on how I'm thinking differently, nothing gets solved. So it's a combination of integration and action, as well as that radical acceptance piece too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that word into the fold, because that's exactly where I was heading to. Is yes, that, you know, that yoga retreat may be the thing that sparks that realization of, oh, this has been, you know, this is why I have this experience. This is where this pattern is coming from. But if you don't integrate that knowledge and begin to do something about it slowly over time, then you're not. I mean, just the understanding, that aha moment is not enough. You know, I can't remember what it. There's so many different ways that they describe this, but you know, if it took you, you know, years to develop this specific lifestyle, it's going to take you, you know, probably a fairly proportional amount of time to undo that lifestyle and create a new one, or modify it in a way that creates what you want.
A very wise friend of mine say something very similar, like, if it takes you 5 miles to walk into the forest, it's 5 miles out.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You know, there's no shortcut, and you know, maybe you find the magical shortcut somewhere, but if it's 5 miles in, it's 5 miles out.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh man.
Gotta do the work.
Integration, the hardest part, the absolute hardest part of, you know, you see this a lot with psychedelic therapy, people not wanting to integrate these very powerful experiences. You see it with anything in life. I'm so glad we got here, and it's those same concepts again of like approach versus avoidance. Whenever you have the lesson, the thing, the voice from heaven, whether it's your ayahuasca retreat or your 60-minute yoga class, and you have the download, you have the thing, then what does it take to integrate that?
Yes.
You know, just a few weeks ago I was in Denver for the Psychedelic Sciences Conference, and one of my favorite ones was around creativity and music. And one of the panelists, a famous artist, talked about maybe sometimes he'll get his inspiration from like a psychedelic. Maybe, you know, he'll be in a state, you know, have something come through, and it might be, maybe it's a song, album, a career path, an idea, a charity to start, who knows what it is. But the thing that he really emphasized was that was one, you know, an hour, 30 minutes of the inspiration part. It might be weeks, it might be months, it might be years of sober work that makes that into reality.
Yes.
And that disparity is just so hard for us to grasp sometimes, I think, like you're saying exactly about this timing issue, this instant gratification, this just non-acceptance of these almost laws of physics. You know, sure, sometimes there are shortcuts, sometimes there are things, but, oh man. But being able to approach those, again, with that... not too loose, not too tight, finding your appropriate edge, integrating them, that's the big parallel I'm seeing here. Integrating them in that method seems effective. I think what we do is we kind of bite off more than we can chew sometimes. Something comes up, whether we bit it off or it just came up, and we're not able to handle it. So we avoid, and we're not able to find that little sweet spot of, can I sit with the emotional thing that came up during yoga, or the piece of inspiration about my life path that came from the ayahuasca retreat, whatever someone might be sitting with, can we sit with it and keep sitting with it until it's digested and transmutes and alchemizes? I feel like most of the time we just avoid and we circle around it, and we're like, well, I gotta do more psychedelics to help me integrate. I gotta do more psychedelics, then I'll be able to.
Right, the answer is not always just more. Yeah, the answer is not always more. Exactly.
A perpetual issue here. That, you know, we're all working through. We're all trying to work through, at least. I did want to get another. Do you have anything right now, in? I have a few other.
I was just gonna tag on to that of just sitting with it and what that means. And Angelica, you were talking about how like growth is uncomfortable. right? And I always think of like the most extreme would be like a caterpillar. It probably doesn't feel too good to turn into a chrysalis and then turn into mush and then somehow emerge as a butterfly. Like I'm sure that
Kids
process.
literally have growing pains.
Right.
Like it's a thing. It's an actual thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
And we
Yeah, that's
forget, even when we're a fully like grown adult, we still have those same growing pains. They're just not physical all the time.
Right.
You know, like it's a thing.
Right. And so when we're you know, presented with or confronted with, you know, maybe one of these uncomfortable truths about how we're creating our own suffering or how our actions are creating an aspect of our experience that we don't necessarily enjoy or like, sitting in it is something that is often difficult for people to just truly sit in that, whatever that emotion is. Maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's grief, maybe it's, you know, who knows, but whatever it is, just sitting in it and allowing it rather than avoiding it or distracting yourself or finding something else to do so you don't have to really be with it. But oftentimes that profound eureka, you know, whatever is that you're looking for is at the other side of that uncomfortable, you know, however long sitting
Fellow
with it.
mental health advocate of mine read off the statistic recently, and I believe, and I may be slightly misstating, but it was something around the lines of, if we actually sat with whatever emotion we were feeling, it would be over in 90 seconds. If I actually sat in my deep, overwhelming grief and just let it just pour over me and through me, I'd be done with it in a minute and a half. But we do everything to try and distract or blame somebody else or put it on somebody else or like go curl in a rabbit hole and woe is me. And it's like, no, feel that grief for 5 minutes. I've said this to clients too. Like I had a client who was just like really did not want to tap into their emotions. And I was like, you know what? We're anticipating it's going to be this gigantic blowout and you're like incapacitated for days. I was like, you might just have a 5-minute cry in the car.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, oh my God, I had my 5-minute cry in the car and I feel so much better. Like, great, that's all you needed. You were willing to sit with it for 5 whole minutes.
Right, back to the non-avoidance. Yeah, full circle.
Just do it.
Don't avoid
Break
it.
the Band-Aid.
And this is just such a good example of where the yoga leaves the mat. You know, the nature of the mind and of all things of impermanence. One of the core Buddhist concepts. You see that whenever you're in the yoga class and you're like, is this ever going to end? And it eventually ends. You get it there. You get it in a body scan meditation when you notice, you know, an itch and the itch goes away, and a pain and the pain goes away, and a weird shimmery feeling, and that changes and morphs. It's very apparent in the nature of our senses in a way that can, I think, bleed through to our rational understanding and our spiritual acceptance or emotional acceptance of it in a way that, again, yoga off the mat. That's one thing I love about studying with your school is, you know, I'm always noticing these ways in which the yoga leaves the mat.
Yeah.
And you guys do a great job of, not just teaching asana. You know, it's all there.
Yeah.
So this thing I've heard, you know, it's the nature of all emotions. Like you're saying, these emotions will arise, they'll heighten, they'll dissipate, they'll leave, and you know we can just prolong that experience endlessly with distraction and avoidance. But it will always eventually come out and rise, find its peak of whatever, and leave. And they say with anger, I've heard a few teachers say this at least, that anger, if you let it heighten all the way, that if you don't avoid, you get it all the way, that it ends in laughter. The anger, I don't know if that's always true or what, that's a cosmic joke. I can see other ways in which it might, but they say if you crescendo a situation, maybe before it turns into violence or something else, maybe they're saying if you crescendo anger, it turns into laughter. And I really love that concept.
I would definitely believe that.
It resonates to me somewhat. There's a reason why stand-up comedians go around and get everyone's diaphragm shaking in these massive arenas. There's a reason we're drawn toward it, right? That laughter. So just what a great reminder. And again, I'm just seeing all these parallels between what you practice in one area of your life, what you study in one area of your life, will have so many more kind of impacts than you might have, ever guessed. The other thing that really caught me was when you guys were talking about 5 miles in, 5 miles out. And something I've always wanted to ask you about, Angelica, I'm really glad I have you here for, is can you talk about the word recovery? You can both tell us about yoga recovery and why it's named that. And then I really want to hear what your views are about recovery and this word.
Thank you for asking this question. So I did study addictions counseling with Purdue. Wonderful program, highly recommend it. I've always been drawn to the addiction space. I've never touched a drug in my life. I've never had a drinking problem. And so, I do have that little shred of imposter syndrome that still sits with me to this day, but that little fear keeps me sharp, right? When I initially, and I will say this to anybody that asks me, I am still fuzzy on how this all came to be, truly. I remember sitting in an office during my practicum, and I was, getting some hours in, and all of a sudden I'm just like, I'm not going to do this 9-to-5 thing, so how am I going to take this skill set beyond my degree? And I just started putting pieces together. So I do have a master's in nonprofit management. That was my first leg of study many years ago. So I've always loved small business management. I've always loved the nonprofit space. And so I was like, okay, so how am I gonna give back? Okay, and how am I gonna give back practically? Because doing that through the red tape of a giant institution was not how I was gonna do it, because that's just not who I am. So when I initially put this thing together, I was looking at recovery from that lens, like people that were recovering from substance use issues or behavioral issues. And what I found was it actually was restricting me in reaching a bigger group of people. And so I have gradually shifted my language towards mindfulness, mindful yoga, mindful retreats, because the reality is we are all recovering from something. It doesn't have to be a substance. It doesn't have to be a behavioral addiction. It could be trauma. It could be a life matter. It could be a physical illness. It could be so many different things, a bad relationship. I mean, we're all recovering from something at some point, not indefinitely. I mean, you could go really deep and say, I'm recovering from generational trauma or ancestral issues, whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is we're all recovering from something. And so how I view recovery is very much from a space of, what are you working on right now? That's all. And I think that we can work through so many different things in our lives, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, through the yogic path. And so that's where yoga recovery for me now sits, is what do you want to work on right now? What is the thread that you need to carry on your path of self-awareness right now? And everything that I offer, I think, can provide a gateway to get there. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm one for words, so that recovery word really, really sticks with me. And you can see stigma in different addiction spaces and stuff. And so, using the word recovery, sometimes you wonder about, how people will receive that. And over the years, I've started to have similar thoughts about what am I recovering? What have I lost, maybe, is one view, and then what am I recovering? Almost like reclaiming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting and kind of heartbreaking, though, to think about that. We can all think of something we lost that we would want to have back, whether that's a childhood toy or a childhood mindset of the world being, such a safe place, maybe, or infinite possibilities. I think children
actually,
see
if I may riff off that for a second, I will say I do still struggle with the word recovery because, and this kind of gets into a whole other leg of my personal philosophy, but I think particularly from the substance use space, we get into this mindset of I'm a recovering addict. I'm a recovering this. Well, when are you recovered?
Yeah.
You have to decide that. If you're in recovery in perpetuity, when are you recovered? When do you move on from that? And so I do, as much as I love how I've morphed what that term is for my organization, I do still struggle with it for that reason, and you spoke to it, that it can be really disheartening, being like, what have I lost? What am I trying to bring back or reclaim? And will I ever get that? That can be really heavy, right? And so I still struggle with that word, to be very honest with you, for the reason I just said.
Yeah, and
thank you for sharing.
And that makes sense too if you connect that back to what we were talking about earlier about the yogic perspective and the lens through which you see your experience. If you are attached, if you have some level of attachment to some sort of a label, for instance, one of our coaches has a history in the substance abuse recovery, and some of the conversations he and I have had about 12-step and some of the issues he has with their model is that you're forever an addict. Yeah. You have that title, and that's what you identify as that, and you never drop that. And so, but at what point have you dropped it, and yet that process has you perpetuating that self-fulfilling, prophecy, or that self-identified title of I am still an addict, when maybe it's been a decade, 2 decades since you have actually been in that space. And so one of the things that we had talked about before, or not talked about before, but that was in our notes prior to starting this podcast, was the pros and cons of diagnosis.
Yes.
And so I think this is a nice little segue here of what are the pros and cons of these labels, these boxes that are so common in our society of, we'll just slap this label on you. This you have this, so that means this, and this. Have a good day. Now that's part of your identity. Yes. But if we are actively walking in our yogic perspective, as you put it, like being on our mat, even when we're not on the mat, going inward, being present with our breath, present with our mind, present with our experience, how does that fall in with these labels or these diagnoses that are so commonly thrown around today?
Yeah, and it's part of why I never ask any of my clients if they're an addict. I never, ever ask them. I also never ask them, what is your diagnosis? I don't care. I don't. If you think it's relevant to tell me what your diagnosis is, that's fine. Because diagnosis does give you information. It gives you something to connect to. It's something that could lead you to answers. It's something that could lead you to perspective. And for that reason, I think diagnosis is temporarily on the path very helpful. Just as I think anybody that steps into a 12-step program, I think it is temporarily in the beginning very helpful, because the thing that the addictive mind needs is structure. And the 12-step model provides very clear structure. And there's something beautiful to that. But if you are stuck only working that structure for decades on end, have you really evolved? You know, and if that structure is working properly, I mean, back to what I said before, the students should surpass the teacher, right? If that structure works for a period of time, eventually you should surpass that. That structure is your teacher. And if it's working well, you should be above that at some point. But the people that get stuck and like, I go to my meetings every week for decades on end, I don't know if it's still working for you. There's something that's keeping you connected to it, and that's great. And maybe that's the community or the way it makes you feel or something like that. But are you truly evolving above what got you there in the first place? I don't know. And it's the same thing with diagnosing. It's like, sure, diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. Okay, that tells me you might see certain symptoms arise. And that diagnostic label is going to help you identify, like, oh, this is why I experienced this thing. It helps you understand. It helps you better connect with yourself. But at the same time, that diagnosis is part of a structured manual that was put together that grouped like symptoms into a category. That structure is a teacher. It's a temporary teacher, and if it's working well for you, if it's helping you understand yourself better, then eventually you should be above what that diagnosis was. You should be above and past that label. So that's why I never ask, and I don't care. I want to know who you are right now, what are you experiencing, and where do you want to go? And it's also why I hate insurance companies and I don't work with them with every effort possible, because I have to put a label on every client that bills insurance, and I don't like it. And it's for the sake of them getting care. Why should I have to label somebody with something in order for them to get care? How is that fair, ultimately? I want to help the person that is sitting right in front of me feel better. Why do I have to put a label on that? They're taking that step for themselves to be a better version of themselves. You don't need a label for that.
It's so similar to what you were saying about recovery. It's like recovery can mean healing, yes. But if you're in recovery, does that mean I'm not well? Am I healing? Am I recovering from an injury, or am I growing in a new area? Mm-hmm. The same thing you're talking about with these insurance companies, and I just love the way you're, viewing these labels, and that you're not saying they're evil. They might have a temporary benefit, they might have a purpose. You might see yourself in a new light with these labels, diagnoses. But what I'm hearing maybe is a way of handling that, something that comes up on the podcast often, something Anil shares around holding things lightly. Mm-hmm. How lightly can I hold this? Yeah. How lightly can I hold this? And that's how I feel about these labels and diagnoses. It's like they do have their value. I'm a physician assistant. I've worked in Western medicine for maybe too long, and I see so many of the same issues you're talking about with these chronic kind of disabling almost mindsets that are almost inherent to the system. Yeah. And that's kind of what I was hearing here with when you were sharing about AA, and now about insurance companies. I do think a lot of organizations, whether it's intentional or not, and I think it's almost always unintentional, they have almost an embedded growth obligation, is a term I've heard before, an ego, which is funny, an embedded growth obligation, an understood thing that this is supposed to grow. It's not at the right size, that very capitalist, that wherever we're at isn't good enough and we should always be growing. Yes. And another thing they maybe have, and maybe they don't know they have, is an underlying need for self-preservation or a goal of self-preservation. Unless it's actually stated otherwise, I want to put myself out of a job through service, then you are, even with the best intention, having these ideas that we should self-preserve and probably even grow. And if you're an insurance company, or you are, let's say, AA, doesn't that kind of mean you will have to have more and more people who are either sick so they can receive care, or addicts so they need this organization? Yes. And that's such a large-scale, disempowering mindset that I'm just really happy to hear you talk about this way, to bring up Neville Goddard and this, view of really moving toward what you want. And I think the words we use are so important. So I'm really happy to hear that you think about this with recovery and all these, because they're incredibly powerful things, unless we hold them lightly enough and can rest
and
in that space behind
science is a beautiful, evolving thing, and there is science that works. And the mental health industry is based on science, and there are aspects of it that work phenomenally well. And our medical industry has evolved leaps and bounds. I mean, the treatments that are available nowadays are incredible. Like, I'm not discounting how important the science is, but yeah, it's like if we cling so hard, nothing works by force. And regardless if we're talking about mental health or not, like, we can't force a pill down somebody and expect their problems are going to go away, right? Like, it's gotta be an ease in, and we gotta hold things without attachment, like Ian was talking about before, So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine recovering from like a laparoscopic appendectomy. Sure, there's a lot of great things to diagnoses and the rigidity, but whenever it spreads too far, especially into these realms of mental health, which, I'm just always blown away by your the number of hats you wear and the different ways in which you wear those hats. And it all does make sense to me, though. It's this fluid thing where when you accept it's connected, why wouldn't you be helping someone with this whole array of emotional, physical, spiritual, psychological, issue? When we do try to segment it, that's where it kind of becomes less effective.
Yeah.
And your counselor's not talking about stretching, and your yoga teacher's not talking about your mind.
And to be fair, like, I've said to most of my clients, like, in an ideal world, I don't have a job. In an ideal world, like, everybody's happy and operating at their highest frequency and full of love and full of bliss, and, like, we don't need fixing, But we're human, so of course I'm going to have a job, because humans come with egos, and egos can cause chaos, and that's what it is. But yeah, like, the ultimate self-preservation, like, as you were talking about, is working on yourself, is self-awareness, is mindfulness, is the yogic path, everything we've been talking about. That's the ultimate self-preservation, because the longest relationship you have is the one with you. Like, nobody else is going to be with you the last breath that you take, right? So I think the ultimate self-preservation is working on yourself.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I've said this before, and it'll probably get old eventually, but the only thing you can do for anyone else is work on yourself as well.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I've said that to every client I've had.
Yeah.
Like, you can't fix them, you got to work on you.
It's really the only work to be done
Yes.
in this realm, is to work on yourself. And coming back to these diagnoses, if we're attached to this diagnosis as a part of who we are, or a part of our identity, then a lot of times that can be counterproductive. I see a lot of, it seems a bit of a trend now, but like adults who are 20, 30, 40 plus years old that are just receiving like an ADD or ADHD diagnosis, and it's like, oh well, that explains everything. Cool, well that's just who I am, and that explains why I have all these problems. And so now anytime that these patterns emerge, oh, ADHD, cool, got it, and I'm just going to keep perpetuating what I've been doing this whole time, but now I've got a label to justify or to explain what's been going on, rather than, oh, this is simply like a lens or a perspective of one aspect of my experience that I don't have to continue doing, but it is something that has been happening or that is alive in me, and now I can work on that the same way that I can work on my physical regimen, or the same way that I can work on my breath work through whatever. Like, it's not, a diagnosis is not a get out of jail free card or a scapegoat or this thing that's like, well, there you go. You can't blame me. Blame the diagnosis. It's not my fault. I have this thing that's totally out of my control. In my opinion, there's very few things that are out of your control if it's a part of yourself. I think that if you do the work, you can improve or modify or shift just about anything within yourself.
Yes. Yeah, I love how you said all of that. I couldn't have said it better myself, honestly. Thank you.
I almost don't even want to go there, but
Go there, Derek. Go there.
I'm gonna have to.
Don't avoid it.
All right, everyone put.
No avoidance.
Right.
Don't avoid it,
No
Derek.
avoidance, just approach. All right. Well, everyone get your tinfoil hats on. Does everyone have your tinfoil hats on?
I can go get mine. Hold on.
All right, that's good. We're not avoiding, we're just protecting. No, just with everything we're talking about, it's hard. Again, I said earlier, I don't think most of these systemic problems are intentional. I don't think the cackling, billionaires but sitting there petting their furless cat and, how do I get them? But with what you're saying about the ADHD diagnosis, 100%. And one thing that's really resonated with me, I must say it is fact because I feel like it is. We live in an ADHD society.
Oh my God.
I think more often not that anyone has ADHD.
We are so overstimulated in our society.
Yep.
I don't care if you have that diagnosis or not.
Right.
There's too much. There's way
It's
too much.
such a society. And with these, magic screens in our pockets and everywhere, and everything else going on, a lot of things, it's hard for me to not look at that and be like, well, it's a shame because that diagnosis is just perpetuating the societal norm, which probably benefits, the structures of capitalism is probably where I'd point to be as broad as you could,
Sure.
Maybe, whoever's in power would be the other broad way. These things, I'm not pointing at any one thing, but it's hard to not see that, if we have a super distracted, literally it's in the word, society around us and people are acting on that, and instead of changing the society, they're all internalizing it, addressing a label, and like you said, either using it as a scapegoat possibly as well, that's just how I am, I have ADHD, or using it to focus and try all this on themselves, when maybe it's the norm of cell phone use 25 hours a day that's causing these issues, and maybe it's not just you and you don't need to go to 8 years of therapy and blame yourself for it. Maybe it's these other things around there.
Well, a 24-hour news cycle, and then you add that into social media, it's blended into there as well. Like, you can't escape all of these different things that are happening that are, intended and almost spun into this, like, doom spiral of everything is collapsing, and there's so many bad things happening, and, it's all kind of culminating all at once. And so what could you possibly do as this insignificant little tiny person who is a victim of all of these things? Like, it's all just happening to you. Like, it makes sense that it would be difficult to grasp your specific role and how you should be approaching these things, and how do you live your life with all of these things, these impending awful things that you're being reminded of constantly if you're tuned into your screens as often as a lot of people are. Like, it's a natural consequence. But then you go into children. Like, so I have an 8-year-old, and one of his my son's dearest friends that he's they've been close ever since they were little. This kid is in class and he can't sit still because he's forced into a desk for 8 hours a day, forced to learn things he's not really interested in learning in an environment he probably doesn't enjoy being in. And there's something wrong with the kid because he's not able to sit still for all that time. And so they medicate them the same way they medicate these 40-year-olds who can't handle the all of these impulses or inputs and all of these things that are being presented to them. And it's like you were saying, Derek, it perpetuates this cultural phenomenon of, well, nobody can focus. And so it's a people issue, not a society issue.
Yeah. Exactly. How do you navigate that, Angelica? I mean, you have to show up and walk the walk more than a lot of us do by being so present in your schools and teaching so much and being there. I noticed that I notice you show up mindfully in our interactions and ways of being and stuff. How do you navigate this ADHD society?
I travel a lot.
Get out of it. We just leave.
I get out of here.
We just
End
get out of the dream
podcast.
spot.
And thanks for coming on, Angelica.
No, I mean, no, what I was thinking when you were speaking, I do travel a lot, and I've been to some just incredibly beautiful places, but the places that I resonate most with are places that have, I mean, for obvious reasons, water and some sand and some sunlight, those are the obvious things, but really, like, when you're living in a place that you're just around the elements, there are these simple homes with no AC, open windows, maybe a couple chairs, a bed, that's it. What else do you need? And it's my truly, I mean, I've been so blessed. I mean, since I've really taken a larger and larger role in these schools, and Zeb has opened that door for me for many years now, and I'm grateful to him always for that. But the opportunity to travel and to see how other people live so much more simply than we do in the States, with so much less, and it feels so much better, So, quite honestly, like, I'm able to sit with the complete overstimulation that we're in by going elsewhere, truly, and just like, and letting the simplicity of being in a piece of sand with water and sunlight on you, and that being enough. Like, I sit with that. I sit with that. I sit with how simple that is and how nourishing that is. And that gives me fuel to come back to, I mean, my daily life is chaos. I run 5 businesses. It's chaos all the time. And I love it. I love everything that I do, but that it's actually become most apparent to me in particularly the last year, that I can go real hard 24/7 for a few weeks on end, and then I'm like, I'm done. I need to escape now. I need to reset. I need to go somewhere simple, and I do. And it only takes a couple days, and I feel refueled and recharged by that. But it's, how do I navigate the society? I go to a simpler one. To be very blunt. So, I keep a simple life. I don't need a lot. I really don't. So, I mean, I live in yoga clothes, and I talk to people all day, and I'm happy. Like, I really don't need much else. So.
Yeah, I love that, the perspective shift that you get from traveling to different places and being able to witness other lifestyles other than the one that we're immersed in here. Because you get a little bit of like a tunnel vision, right? You get a little bit of this is what life is, because this is what you're experiencing all the time. And I go to Mexico once a year at a minimum. This really beautiful city called Guanajuato in central Mexico, where I have a friend, and I go there once a year. And there's just little subtle differences that you notice where there's not a grind. It's not like we have to be working all the time, and if we're not working, we're not good enough, and we're not accomplishing this or that. Like, they just take days off. Like, you'll just see a sign on the door that just says, "Nope, we're closed today because we, whatever, they have a family thing going on, or they have whatever else is happening." So what I find is trying to incorporate that into your experience here. Incorporating that perspective, that calm, that peace, that balance of, yes, I'm going to grind, but I'm also going to have downtime. I'm also going to have time for self-care. I'm also going to have time to just simply sit and be and not be doing constantly. I find that's been really beneficial for my mental health and my personal practice here.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, for me personally, like, my capacity for stress is extremely high, and I've been told that, and that it can be a strength for me, but I also, and again, like, particularly in the last, like, couple years, I've recognized, like, that can also be my detriment, and you shouldn't be operating at 100% as an ongoing thing. You know, like push 80, 85, you know, but don't go to the very, very edge. You know, we talked about the edge, you know, that's pushing towards pain, you know, if we're really going that extreme, right? So yeah, it's balance. It's all about balance, you know.
Yeah, you don't think about having your car at 100%, you know, of its capacity all the time. That would be a short, fiery ride. And whatever you're doing, we probably shouldn't be at 100% all the time.
Right.
Even if we should always try our best, trying our best doesn't mean trying our hardest.
Yes.
It doesn't mean,
having,
you know, all the gears spinning as fast as they need to. And we need rest. I'm almost hearing that you travel to recover your sanity, you know, bring back recovery or recover, you know, a natural sense of stimulation and time, a more natural than the one that we can often be inundated in.
Absolutely.
That's like really good. And escaping the doom spiral, which I don't know if I've ever heard the word doom spiral before but I like it. Feels like we're all just swirling around the doom spiral together sometimes, and now I feel a little more at home. But we're approaching time. I want to give you a chance, Angelica, if there's any areas we haven't hit, anything else you wanted to riff on that we should do before we sign out.
Oh, wow. My tagline is lived mindfully, like lived mindfully, but live mind fully. You know,
What's live mind?
Go to, like, know what your capacity for life is and live it as much as you can with a healthy level of discernment for what's too much, you know. And getting to that point is, it's a journey, you know, and like, what's the ultimate destination? I would like to think it's bliss, samadhi. You know, we've been talking about the yogic path, but you know, that's going to look different for every person. And so, what I would encourage others to explore is like, what is your ultimate bliss? Like, what does that life look like for you? And recognize that you can get that, and you're going to have teachers and guides and challenges and blocks in the road along that path. But ultimately, you have the power to achieve that. You know, and as long as you keep the lens as a self-reflective one, you know, you're going to get on that path much more smoothly, as long as you recognize that it's up to you. So live fully, live mindfully, and you know, you'll get to where you want to go eventually.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's great. No, thank you. And anything else feel complete?
Yeah, I got two things. One of them, just to riff off of what Angelica was just sharing, is this idea, and this is, you know, a concept that Ram Dass, he comes up all the time in this podcast, but something that Ram Dass mentions often is like nirvana isn't this physical place that you're going to go to when you die. It's not some like magical land that you're just gonna, oh, I'm dead and now I'm here. I made it. You know, it's something that can truly be created now in this lifetime, and it's a mindset, and it's something that you can work toward and accomplish and achieve now.
Yes.
Or maybe not now, but very, very soon, if you do the work. It's attainable in this experience now. It's not this like idea that we've all been, or many of us have been fed, of heaven and hell, right? You die and then you either go left or you go right.
Yes.
You either go up or you go down.
Yeah.
But that's not, in my experience, true. In my experience, you can accomplish this through the work, and the work is what you were saying earlier, Angelica, which I keep reading my notes over and over, and this is something that I'm going to keep with me at least for the rest of the day and as long as I can throughout this week, which is the idea of when you're in a yoga class, or when I'm in a yoga class, I am fully in my body on that mat. That mat is my space. I don't really care what anybody else is doing. I'm on this mat and I'm going as deep and as present with myself as I possibly can. But then when I leave the class, I don't keep that most of the time. I'm not still on the mat when I'm off the mat, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And so the idea of being on my mat all day, I'm going to tune into my breath, tune into my body, tune into what thoughts are coming up into my mind, and sit with it rather than waiting for my 1 hour a day class where that's where I'm going to be mindful. That's where I'm going to do this yoga. But you can do that yoga all the time if you...
It's a lifestyle choice.
Right. You can tune into yourself and into your breath all day. It doesn't have to just be when you're in the studio and on your mat. And so I think that's kind of those two things coming together. That's the path to nirvana in this lifetime, is to be on your mat even when you're not on your mat.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to choose it again and again, moment by moment, day by day.
Because you're going to get pulled away. You're going to get distracted. There's going to be things that pull you off of the mat the same way that it happens during class. Somebody sneezes. Maybe somebody's trying to do a little extra, advanced move and they don't quite pull it off, and maybe they tumble and it kind of brings your attention to what someone else is doing on their mat, or whatever catalyst, a car horn honking outside or something. There's always going to be these opportunities for distraction, but can you bring yourself back to your awareness, both on the mat and when you're not on the mat?
Yeah.
Can you recover?
Boom,
That's
Derek,
recover.
nailed it. Nailed it, Derek. Boom.
I love it. Full circle. That's good. That's how you know we're complete, whenever we come full circle.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much. This has been such a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I learned a lot. I have a page of notes, as I always do. I have a big, larger than a legal pad. Always thankful whenever I fill up a page. Really appreciate you both. And then, Angelica, I want to give you a chance to, and put on any of the hats you want to plug for with the 5 businesses you run and anything else. Tell people where they can find you, where they can connect with you.
Yeah,
anything you'd like the audience to know?
Thank you for that. I'll try to keep the list short, but Yoga Recovery Pittsburgh, yogarecoverypgh.com. The handles are Yoga Recovery PGH. My nonprofit operates out of Yoga Factory, which is one of our schools. Info@yogafactory.com or www.yogafactory.com for information there. And also our newest school, Yoga Hive, yogahivepgh.com. Please come visit any and all of our schools. And if you're looking for some fun things to wear, especially in the summer, because it doubles as swimwear, radiantactivewear.com. So find me at any and all of those places. And if you connect to any of those organizations, you will find my personal pages as well. So, but really, if you look at the Pittsburgh yoga scene, you're probably going to see myself or my partner or one of our teachers in that space. So I look forward to connecting with more like-minded people. This was awesome.
That's wonderful. Yep, I can't recommend all of these enough. I really loved the yoga community that I've met through it, the yoga teachings, the school, the additional offerings like breathwork courses and things that have been really impactful. We have to have Zeb on next, and maybe both you guys together. I think and wonderful conversations abound, and you can't wait to meet Zeb, another wonderful member of this great community. So, yeah, everyone check them out. Hopefully see you around, and thanks all for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Before we close off, I want to also, we're getting out of practice of this, but for any of our listeners who have questions, any topics that you want us talking about, or any specific things that you're experiencing that you would like for us to explore on the podcast, please submit them. There's a link in the bio, and you can always reach out to us on the website, helpingtheherd.com. And yeah, thank you so much for listening, and thanks for being here, Angelica, and Derek, as always, thanks for co-hosting this beautiful podcast.
Thank you, guys.
This has been the Do You Feel Heard podcast. If you're interested in resources that will help you move through conflict, you can go to doyoufeelheard.com, where we have tools for individuals and couples.